information there that there has been an uptick in the number of vaccinations. People who are aged between 18 and 34 appear to be flocking to centres to get their shots. But there are fears that the initial enthusiasm may fizzle out, as it appeared to do with older generations. Professor Helen Rees is the African Regional Immunisation Advisory Group Chair for the World Health Organization. She's also the chair of SAPRA. She joins us now. Professor Rees, good evening to you, and thank you very much indeed for your time. Still, we see that over 300 people in our country died from COVID-19 yesterday. It's a reminder, again, I suppose, it really is all about vaccinations and about using social distancing to protect ourselves.
Yes, and thank you for having me, Stephen. I think by now, just about everybody knows that there isn't a magic bullet, that we're going to have to really implement everything that we know. The social distancing, all of the public health measures that we're trying to implement remain incredibly important. But the vaccination is pretty much one of the most important tools that we now need to accelerate, as you've just said. That really is the thing that is going to build up the sort of population protection and then decrease transmission of the virus in the population. We keep seeing the numbers of people being vaccinated on a daily or weekly basis going up and down quite dramatically. What we need is around 300,000. That was a day. That was the target on a consistent basis. Do you think we're pulling all the levers in government and our society to do that? Or do you think there are levers we can still pull to do that on a sustainable basis? I don't think we are yet. And I think every sector of society that's got a role to play has to think what their contribution will be. To try and persuade people to get vaccinated in the kind of numbers that we want, we're first of all going to have to say who are we targeting, and it's very different groupings. Somebody who's over 60 is very different to a young person now who's 18. The motivation to get vaccinated is going to be extremely difficult and different, rather. So I think that we need to do much more on that. We need to explain more, and we need to address more the uncertainties that many people are voicing. Concerns about safety, concerns about whether the vaccine's been developed too fast. All of these things need to be thought about and honestly answered. And as scientists and clinicians, we need to be very honest and transparent about what we know, what we don't know, where we're going with vaccines, of the likelihood of boosters. All of these questions that people have, we need to be able to answer. So I agree with you. I think that we need to do much more and try and persuade people. And that persuasion also needs to think about not only communication, but incentivizing and encouraging as well. So, I mean, in our country, we have enough vaccine doses. The health department has said that several times, and we seem to be pretty certain that we're going to get enough in the future as well. But we know that Africa has fewer doses per percentage of population than most of Europe and North America, and yet, Professor, we know that vaccine doses that are being prepared here in Klopperge, some of them are going to Europe rather than our continent at the moment. This is a dialogue that's a global dialogue that's terribly important, because we're talking about vaccines now, but very soon, as we get better therapeutics to treat people, we're also going to be talking about that and the inequity in that, and where those therapeutics are available and where they're not available. But if we focus on vaccines, as you say, the African region has been able to immunize less than 3% of its population, whereas we're seeing 50, 60, 70% and more in rich countries. This just makes absolutely no sense. It's inequitable, it's immoral, and it's unjustifiable. But particularly with this pandemic, especially with the Delta variant, what we need to do is to get vaccines out to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, not get small numbers of people in rich countries vaccinated with boosters across whole populations. It might be desirable from an individual point of view, and we're learning more and more about that, but that's not going to stop the pandemic. And what the world needs now is to put the brakes on this pandemic. If we don't, we will get new variants. And many experts now, we believe that there's a clock ticking before the variant that develops is completely resistant to all the vaccines that we have. And then we're going to be rushing to develop a whole new set of vaccines that will address a new variant. So this is really something that we have to keep shouting about as in terms of global equity. But as I say, it's vaccines now, and I think we also need to start soon. We'll have to start raising our voices about treatments as well, because if there are better treatments coming out, and there are, if we're able to treat this infection and treat it better and get better therapeutics over time, that will also lessen the threat to societies, because we'll have something that we can manage at both ends of both prevention and treatment. So both of these things need to be watched, and we need to keep pushing for access for the region.
Some problems can look as if they will never be solved. Smallpox and polio both looked at one stage as if they would never be solved, and yet, really, we don't need to worry about them anymore precisely because of vaccinations. We do need to worry about them in that we need to make sure people are still vaccinated, but that's it. Do you believe, Professor Rees, that one day there will be a time when everyone on our continent is vaccinated against COVID-19? Can you see that day?
Well, I think that, again, what's happening with if you think about the coronaviruses and the sort of the flu viruses that we see, that having caused terrible pandemics going back, centuries ago at the beginning of the last century, that is now a seasonal virus. It hasn't gone away. It stayed with us, and it changes and it changes, and the vaccines change, and we're still trying to get better vaccines for that, and we change those vaccines every year. I think the feeling at the moment with the coronavirus is that what is likely to happen is that it's likely to become a seasonal virus. We've already know that coronaviruses like winters better than summers, and so we might well see that this becomes endemic and it stays with us, and we're going to have to keep changing vaccines. But it might well become less severe. It might learn to live with us better without causing the sort of severe diseases we're seeing at the moment. But all of this is speculation. I don't think anyone thinks at the moment, looking at how the virus is behaving, that it's going to go away and it's going to just quietly fade away and eliminate itself.
Professor Helen Rees, thank you very much indeed. The World Health Organization African Regional Immunization Advisory Group Chair and the Chair of SAPRA.